ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So in this verse, the four Kumaras are contemplating, they are considering how to do welfare for these two doorkeepers. Welfare means in the form of punishment, and that punishment is their welfare. Kartum prakashtam. Kartum means to bestow. Prakashtam means benefit. Iha dhimahi. In this matter of offense, what they have done, let us consider dhimahi, kartum prakashtam, to bestow some benefit upon them. Now why? Mandadibhyam. Because their intelligence is not very nice. Their intelligence is not suitable for them to stay in this Vaikuntha Loka. Mandadibhyam. So, what should be done? Why their intelligence is not nice? Why are they thinking their intelligence is not proper? Because antarbhava drishtya, with their intelligence, with their impure intelligence, they are seeing duality in the spiritual world. Antarbhava means duality. Differences they are seeing in the spiritual world. So what should be done? What is the benefit we should give them? Lokanito vrajatam. Itaha means from this place, Lokan vrajatam. They should be sent to material world. So this is beneficial for them. This is an apt punishment for them. This is required for them. Because their intelligence is not very good. They are seeing duality in the spiritual world. So that means their intelligence has become contaminated. That is what they are saying. Then what is this material world? Why it is called punishment? Why are they being sent to the material world? And what is the material world? According to all of us, or people in general think material world means a place of enjoyment. Isn't it? But actually Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, this is not a place for gentlemen to live. Material world is not a place for a gentleman to live. It is just like criminal department or prison house is not a place for a gentleman to live. Right? Here it is said, Papi yasas traya ime ripavo asya yatra. I should leave my mobiles somewhere before this. Till I am busy in class. Papi yasas traya ime ripovo asya yatra. This is material world is a place where people with contaminated intelligence reside, these people also have contaminated intelligence, they should also go and reside there. Because that is a place of papis, prisoners, people who are sinful. So, these sinful people should go and reside in the material world. And what is that material world? Traya ime ripovo asya yatra, where there are three kinds of enemies. Ripovo means enemies. What are the three kinds of enemies? That is desire, lust and anger. Sense gratification, desire, lust and anger. Prabhupada says, one should not be therefore angry in the absence of an opportunity for sense gratification, and one should not be lusty to acquire more than necessary. So, desire, anger and lust, this is the place, this material world. So, there they should be sent, that is what it is said. So, Prabhupada is saying this is a very important verse because this explains why the pure living entities are sent to the material world. The Lord does not push them. It is by their contaminated mentality that they come to this material world. Sometimes people ask this question, isn't it? Why did God send us to this material world? There so much suffering is there. Why did first of all God send us? If we were with God, why He did not allow us to be there? Why did He send us? Looks like as if God has pushed us from there. Go. From the spiritual world, go to the material world. No. Here it is very clearly explained why these two inhabitants in Vaikuntha had to come down. Yes, they were forced to come down. But it is not because of the Lord. It is because of their contaminated mentality. Manda dibhyam. Why contaminated mentality? What is that most contaminated mentality in the spiritual world because of which we have to come down? Antarbhava drishtya. Seeing duality. When there is a duality in the mind, then we are not fit to be in the spiritual world. We are supposed to come down to this material world. So sometimes when this question is raised, how the living entity was pure in the spiritual world, everything was, everything is pure in the spiritual world. Why did the living entity come? Why did the living entity fall into this material world? Sometimes this question we ask. So this is the answer here. It is given that actually it is because of this antarbhava drishtya. When we see duality in the spiritual world, that time we come down to this material world. And Prabhupada explains what is that duality, what is the beginning of duality in the spiritual world, because of which we come down in the material world. So in the purport, Prabhupada is saying, the reason why pure souls come into the existential circumstances of the material world, which is considered to be criminal department of the Supreme Lord, is stated in Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, verse number 27. So what is stated there? That Prabhupada is explaining. It is stated, as long as living entity is pure, he is in complete harmony with the desires of the Supreme Lord. But as soon as he becomes impure, he is in disharmony with the desires of the Lord. So, as long as our intelligence is not contaminated, as long as we are pure, we are very much in harmony with desires of the Lord. As soon as there is impurity in the mind, we are in disharmony with the desires of the Lord. And that is why we plan separately from the Lord. Because now, in the spiritual world, He is the master. Then we have developed certain impurities in our mind. We will try to see what is that impurity. So Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, explains two kinds of impurities comes in the mind. Anyone knows? Ichcha and Dvesha. So these are the two kinds of contamination, impurities which arises in the mind. What is that Ichcha? What does it mean? Desires to enjoy independent of Lord. Not exactly. First comes is desire to enjoy like the Lord. So desire. Actually, it is not our position. Why this is called contamination is, that position is of the Supreme Lord. What is our position? We are part of the Lord. Part is meant to serve the Lord. Part is not meant for enjoyment. You see? Suppose all the parts of the body, hand is there, leg is there, nose is there, eyes are there. They are all meant to serve the whole body. If the hand starts thinking, I will enjoy separately, it is a contamination. That is a contamination. So, desire to copy the Lord, desire to enjoy like the Lord. Then why body is enjoying? Why stomach is enjoying? I will enjoy. So when the living entity desires to be the enjoyer, that is called Ichcha. He develops desire to enjoy. And then Dvesha means, why there should be another enjoyer? I am the enjoyer. Not that I will also enjoy, Lord will also enjoy. That is one kind of contamination. First of all, that is a contamination itself. To occupy the position of the Lord and then to think, why He should enjoy? I should enjoy. Why He should be the master? I should be the master. Ishwaroham. I am master. I am enjoyer. That is called Dvesha. Dvesha means envious of the Lord. Envious of His position. He should not have that position. I should have that position. Not only I want to enjoy, I also want to displace him from that position. I want to occupy that position. That is called as Dvesha. So, Ichcha Dvesha Samuthena. And very beautifully it is explained in that verse, same verse, it is nearly the same. There the Lord explains the philosophy. In Bhagavatam, it is a practical application of that philosophy. There Krishna is explaining the principle, here it is the application of that principle. Krishna is explaining if the living entity has Ichcha and Dvesha, what happens? He comes to the material world. Same thing Krishna is saying. Here it is shown in practicality, these two dormants had developed same, Dvanda. What it is said here? Antar Bhava. Antarbhava Drishtya. They had developed that duality in the spiritual world. Because of which, what was the punishment given to them? Lochan ito vrjatam. They should be sent from spiritual world to Lochan. They should be sent to material world. And what is that material world? Material world is Papi Yasas. It is a place resided by Papis, people who are contaminated, who are sinful. And what is that which is this material world? What is that these living entities are covered with? Traya ime ripavo. He is covered by these three enemies: sense gratification, anger and lust. So, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Ichcha Dvesha Samuthena Dvanda Mohena Bharata. When this dvanda comes, which dvanda comes? Ichha and dvesha. This is called duality. So when this develops in the living entity, then what happens? Sarva bhutani sammoham. They become covered with delusion. It is at that point Maya covers the living entity. Not originally. Originally we are not covered. When exactly Maya covers us is very interesting to see. When the living entity develops this dvanda of Ichha and Dvesha, that time Sarva Bhutani Sammoham. The living entities becomes, all the living entities in this material world, they become covered with delusion, Sammoham. That means completely in delusion. And then what happens? Once they are covered with delusion, Sarge Yanti Parantapa. What is Sarga? Sarga is creation. Spiritual world is never created. Spiritual world always exists. Material world is created sometime, it is dissolved sometime. This material world is called Sarga. Spiritual world is not called Sarga. It is not created. It's always there. Prabhupada gives a very simple example to make us understand. Sky is always there. Cloud is created. And cloud is created by the energy of sky only. So, the sun in the sky evaporates water and creates a cloud. So, cloud is created and sometimes cloud is not there, but sky is always there. So, material world is created, that is why it is called Sarga. But the same material world, the same cloud covers our eyes to the sun. So, the same material creation, Maya, covers our vision to the Supreme Lord. Sammoham. So, Sarva Bhutani Sammoham. Sarge means in the material world, which is created. Yanti. Yanti means he goes. He takes his birth. Just like we say, Yanti Deva Vrta Devan. If you worship Devatas, you will go to Devatas. You will go to Devalokas, Swargalokas. Pitra Yanti Pitra Vrtaha. If you worship Pitras, you will go to Pitraloka. And if you develop Ichha Dvesha Samuthena, then Yanti Sarge. You will go to the material world. So Sarge Yanti Parantapa. The living entities enter into this material world or takes his birth into this material world. Prabhupada translates, Ocean of Bharata, Arjuna, O conqueror of the foe, Parantapa, all living entities, Sarva Bhutani, are born into delusion. Sarge Yanti, born, sent to this material world. Otherwise we don't take birth actually. Living entities have no birth. Only Sarge, we are created, we take birth in this material world. How we take birth? With delusion. Born into delusion. Overcome by dualities of desire and hate. Because of this seed of desire and hate, we come into delusion, we take birth in this material world. So this is how it is explained. Now, why does Krishna speak this verse? This is also very interesting. Just before this verse, Krishna explained that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Supreme Lord, he knows everything of the past, he knows everything of the present, he knows everything about the future, and he knows everything about the living entities. But no one knows him properly. Because sometimes people wonder that if God comes in this material world, why people don't surrender to God? Why they don't take to his worship? Right? Because Krishna is saying, when he comes to this material world, even though he knows the past, he knows present, he knows future, he knows all living entities, hardly living entities know him. And why they don't know him, that Krishna explains in the next verse. That material world is a prison house. It is meant for the living entities who have developed dvesha and ichcha against him, and they have come to the material world. And after they have come to material world, they are in sammoha. They are completely deluded, they are completely covered. And they are busy fighting with these three enemies. With these three enemies, sometimes he wants to go to Swargaloka, sometimes he glides down to Narakaloka. So where is the question, he will know me? He will not know me. So then what does Krishna say further? How will the living entity then come to know about Krishna? So that Krishna explains in the next verse. So then Krishna says, Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvanda moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrata. Now Krishna said sammoha. All living entities are covered with sammoha, completely in delusion. Why? Because of dvanda mohena bharata. Correct? Because of ichcha and dvesha dvanda. And now Krishna is telling, if one wants to be free from dvanda, first of all, he has to become freed from papa karma. This is the solution Krishna is saying. Now, it's nearly the same thing. Those doormen have already said, these living entities should be sent to papiyasa, material world which is filled with papa karma. Right? And Krishna is telling, if you want to now get rid of this material world, what you should do? Get rid of papa karma. Get rid of papa karma. Then what will happen? Krishna is saying, Te dvanda moha nirmuktam. Those living entities will be able to overcome this dvanda moha. Only when? Only when we have become freed from papa karma. And that's why Prabhupada says, in Krishna consciousness, both are very important. To get freed from papa karma, to be away from papa karma, 4 regulative principles are must. If you want to be away from papa karma, that makes you eligible to go out of the material world. That gives you a passport, but that doesn't give you a visa. Visa is given when you practice devotional service to the Lord. You become eligible. Yes, you are no more into papa karma. You are following the 4 regulative principles, but at the same time chant 16 rounds. Then you will be able to go back to God. So both are mentioned. Te dvanda moha nirmuktam bhajante mam dridhavrataha. Until and unless you are away from these 4 sinful activities, you cannot worship Krishna with determination. Sometimes we wonder that why again and again we are not very much inclined, not very much attracted. Because Prabhupada explains, you are putting fire by chanting the holy name. You are burning Krishna conscious fire, but at the same time, by breaking these principles, these 4 regulative principles, if you don't follow, you are again putting water on that fire. So it will take long time. If the Krishna consciousness fire has to burn, then at the same time we have to avoid getting wet again and again. So that's why these 2 are very, very important principles. So very beautifully Krishna in the next verse explains this, that Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvanda moha nirmuktam bhajante mam dridhavrata. It is only when we get rid of this papa karma and we become free from these dualities, and then with dridhavrata, with determination, we will be able to worship Krishna then we will be able to come out of this material world. Now, another very important thing which Prabhupada mentions in this purport is about these three enemies which the living entity is struggling in this material world with. They are called Ripavaha. Ripavaha means they are actually enemy. Krishna also calls in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna calls them as enemy. And Krishna says, any sane man, he should be away from these three enemies. Krishna also says, if anyone associates with these three enemies, his doorway to hell is open. His doorway to hell remains open. If anyone associates with these three enemies. Krishna calls them, these are three gateways to hell. These are three gateways to hell. And there is one gateway to spiritual world. So these are three gateways to hell. There is one gateway to spiritual world. Here in this purport also, when Prabhupada says about Jananam Punya Karmanam, not only he should become rid of sinful activities, he should develop pious activities. Prabhupada explains the most pious activity is to serve the pure devotee of the Lord. Prabhupada says in the purport of this, it is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to darkest region of existence. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. You see? So that is called Mahat Dwaram. And these are called Naraka Dwaram. So when one serves Mahat, when one serves a pure devotee of the Lord, then his Dwaram to the spiritual world is opened. And when one serves these three enemies, his gateway to hellish life will open. So that comes in the 16th chapter, which Krishna says. Krishna says, Trividham narakasya idam dwaram. You see, Nashanam atmanaha. Atmanashanam, it will destroy the self. Actually, self cannot be destroyed. Self means our self-interest to go back to Godhead, to be self-realized, that becomes destroyed by these three narakasya dwaram. So what is that? There are three gates leading to this hell: lust, anger and greed. So Prabhupada says, greed means sense gratification, then lust and anger. These three are doorway to hellish life. Everyone must become free from these. Then only it is possible that we'll be able to go back to Godhead. So, in the purport, Prabhupada explains this, in today's purport, he explains this more beautifully. Prabhupada says, by contamination, the living entity is forced to transfer to this material world, where the living entities have three enemies, namely desire, anger and lust. That is greed, anger and lust. Desire also, Prabhupada says, sense gratification. These three enemies force the living entities to continue material existence. These three enemies are meant for that. What is their purpose? Not that these three enemies will tell you, now sir, you go to spiritual world. Their work is to make us rot in this material world. So, these three enemies force the living entities to continue material existence, and when one is free from them, he is eligible to enter the kingdom of God. Therefore, Prabhupada is saying, how to be free from them? The question is, how to be free from sense gratification? How to be free from lust? How to be free from anger? So Prabhupada is saying, One should not therefore be angry in the absence of opportunity for sense gratification, and one should not be lusty to acquire more than necessary. Labho jiveta yavata. As much it is required to keep the body and the soul together, only that much sense gratification, not more than that. One should not become angry. Why I don't have more? See how all those three things are included. How anger comes? When sense gratification we are not able to obtain, we become angry. When our lust is not satisfied, we become angry. That is how anger comes. So Prabhupada is saying whatever minimum is required in Krishna consciousness to keep the body and the soul together, we should be satisfied and not become angry at that. So in this verse, it is clearly stated that the two doormen should be sent into the material world where criminals are allowed to reside. Since the principles of criminality are sense gratification, anger, and unnecessarily lust, these three are the principles of material existence. Greed, anger, and lust. These are three principles of material existence. Such people are never promoted to Vaikuntha Loka. And then Prabhupada is saying, so what is Krishna consciousness doing? By practicing Krishna consciousness, one will become free from these three enemies. People should learn Bhagavad Gita and accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as the Lord of everything. They should practice satisfying the senses of the Supreme Lord instead of trying to satisfy their own senses. Training in Krishna consciousness will help one be promoted to Vaikuntha. So Krishna consciousness is that medicine which will cure the living entity of this disease, of these three diseases. So by training, by getting trained in this Krishna consciousness, gradually we will become free from these three enemies, and then we will become eligible to go back to Godhead. So that is what is being explained. This verse we will stop by this. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.